unleash their own imagination, as opposed to just, here's the stuff you need to know in order to be certified as a person that knows this stuff.
Yeah.
And, so, well, you got that almost right, but you missed one period in there, so we're going to take off.
Right.
That kind of thing, that's what the way they taught when I was a kid.
Right.
That's how they taught things. Like, here's the multiplication tables. You're going to learn them. Here's this rules of conjugation of verbs and all those things. It was all rules and things, and you're just supposed to memorize this stuff. So I can see the problem that you would have if you come from that kind of environment. Why do I keep hitting this thing? and suddenly someone's saying, no, think for yourself. And you're like, that's not what I'm supposed to do. You're supposed to tell me what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
So I could see that being a kind of a big problem that wouldn't necessarily be easy to identify or address, because no one is like actually going to come out and say this is the problem. They're just kind of going to be like, well, some people will seem more imaginative than others because they're more used to using their imagination in this context, whereas others are like, I'm just waiting for somebody to tell me what to do, so you haven't told me yet, so I'm not doing anything yet, that kind of thing.
Definitely.
Is that sort of what you're running into, or is that one aspect of it?
Yeah, I think that's definitely one aspect of it, and I think it can come up in other ways too, even just if the class is a seminar class, and so the students all have to discuss the readings. Some students notice that it can often be American students who are the first ones to speak up and really speak with a lot of confidence, whereas in general, and of course it's not across the board, one thing that people pointed out consistently is a lot of this depends on individual personalities, of course. But you will notice, and I know I've noticed in plenty of my own classes, that oftentimes it's international students, especially those who don't have English as a first language, who tend to be much quieter in class.
Well, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
I would feel that way if I were in a class in some language that I didn't. I kind of knew it, but not 100% confident. I'm not going to go blah, 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 and everybody go, what?
Right.
What are you talking about?
And then when that's for a grade, it becomes sort of an implication of, is this fair?
Definitely.
Yeah. A lot of gender difference, too, like in different cultures?
I would say so.
I would think so.
Well, even in the U.S., I think you can notice in the classroom there are different gender dynamics in the classroom. I think that's everywhere.
Yeah, or how people preface questions. Like, I think it's sort of sometimes an innate thing for women to say sorry before asking a question, and I've noticed that in not as much as I did in undergrad, but still it comes up, and it's not something to blame the women for, because I'm sure I've done it before too. But it's just an interesting sort of, I think it's just one of these ingrained cultural things where. If you're, a masculine person, you are owed this space to talk, and a woman is, it's not thought of as subconsciously, because obviously, I don't think any professor or any program would say like, we want males to be more confident when they speak, but I think it's just something that's ingrained, and the idea of women as subservient has surely not been eradicated from our campuses, and I think a lot of it is subconscious, and I don't think many people would even notice it while it's happening. But yeah, we do. I would say in our classes that is something that's come up. Yeah.
So it's like, I'm sorry, I just had a quick question. Is it like that kind of, I'm sorry, like, excuse me for interrupting? Or is it, I'm sorry I didn't understand it first? What is the I'm sorry? Where does it come from?
I would say either. Maybe just something where, just like the idea that, education is something that's owed to everyone, and questions are something that should be part of education, and just hearing I'm sorry before a question is I think discouraging, and I don't know. I think it's just something that that's again ingrained, but it's not just something that. Like that women do, or something that men exclusively do not do. But I think that's and I'm not sure how it cuts across international versus like born in the U.S. students who are born in the U.S. But it's just something that I tend to notice sometimes, and it's kind of discouraging. And I'm
Well-
sure I've done it too before in time. So I'm not,
Yeah.
it's definitely not something to blame. Something to blame these students for, but I think that
No,
yeah.
I wasn't thinking of it in terms of blaming, but just in understanding the dynamic, because I notice I'm involved in a lot of different kinds of things, the activist sort of things, and I have noticed on many occasions having a great deal of privilege, like being an older man, I can talk and everybody will listen to me. And they'll be like, like you're doing right there. Only you're doing it because I'm making sense. But no, I mean, but it's something that I feel like when I'm in spaces, particularly with younger people, I have to consciously tell myself to shut up and let them talk and do stuff, not in a condescending way, like, oh, I will let you do these things, but more like, stay out of the way, because you don't if you don't know that you're saying something worth hearing, shut up, because they will listen anyway. And if they listen anyway, you're just wasting everybody's time, including your own. You know, so if I'm just like blah 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 blah, which I find that's one downside of the radio show, is that I have to do that. We can't have like lots of dead air. So if you're not talking, I have to be. Somebody needs to be talking. And I do a lot of these shows by myself, so I'll just sit here for an hour and like read news and do all this stuff. But it's an interesting thing, and I've often wondered how do you train people to like not. I mean, I'm sure you recognize it. I'm sure I wasn't telling you anything you hadn't heard before. Like, oh yeah, I know, the guy starts talking and everybody listens to him. And he expects that. And I would think in some cultures that would be sort of just the natural order of things. So you have people not only looking at like the gender dynamics, like, okay, I'm here in this hierarchy, but we're also English as a second language, so we're down here because the English speakers probably will make the most sense, so we'll let them go first. And it's like you have this whole list of people that get to speak before you do. When do you ever get to speak? Well, I guess you're not the professor, so that's not a good question, but how do you get them to participate when in their mind they're like number 10 on the list rather than number 2 or number 1? I don't even know how you would do that.
It's a really hard question, and definitely different faculty members that I spoke to had different answers or different strategies for trying to manage these classroom dynamics. I think your point was so important, that it's definitely not just an issue of international students versus domestic students, or even just men or women, but there are all of these layers in terms of like things that make people feel barriers to trying to speak up or speak with confidence in class, whether it's students who come from students who have different educational experiences, students who are minorities. Like, there are all of these different factors that can kind of like lead to very similar kinds of feelings. So there are always layers, I think, that contribute to these kinds of classroom environments. And I think there's definitely no easy answer, of course, but certainly I think the most important thing is just for faculty members, for professors to be aware of these things and mindful of them. And for example, some professors will actually call students out to try to encourage them to participate more, but that has its advantages and disadvantages always. But I think it's almost in a way something that students have to be aware of too, so that students can almost monitor themselves.
Yes, yeah. I would take responsibility for that because I enjoy talking in class, and I think, it's definitely something to keep in the back of your mind, like, well, you just raised your hand 5 minutes ago. Why not wait to see if someone else has something to say as well? So.
But a lot of our professors are very innovative, and especially one common strategy is that they'll incorporate a lot of small group work into the class, because then everyone really has to participate, and in some ways the stakes feel lower because you're talking to a smaller group of people. So that's a way to bring out more classroom participation. So it's just, I think, seeking out strategies like that. It just requires professors to really care, which I really feel that our professors do, which is great. But I think Yeah, different professors definitely have different strategies.
Mm. Yeah, that's tricky. I like the small group thing because I believe it or not, when I was really young, I was extremely shy and I didn't. And the worst thing you could do is call me out and say, "So, Tommy,
Yeah, that's
what
how
do you
I
think?"
feel.
And I'm just like, "Oh, I think I wish I was under my desk right now."
Yeah, I know I do not
You know.
respond well to just being put on the spot. Never. I'm like, ah.
Yeah, I'm terrible at it. It's
Right.
awful. I mean, now I'm used to blabbing, so I can just start blabbing even if I don't have a good answer. But yeah, I think that's a bad idea. That's actually worse than just letting them sit there and be quiet because
Yeah,
then you're making it an uncomfortable thing.
right.
So small groups, yeah, you get 2 or 3 people together, and then you can like, okay, you're my peers. I can talk a little bit, and say a couple of things, and then as long as you're like relatively cool with it, then I might actually participate, say something.
Right.
That's interesting. So are you doing this by interviewing, or how are you figuring all this stuff out? You're just
Yeah, primarily through interviewing, by talking to, again, professors and students about some of the changes that they see either long-term in the department, changes that are under consideration, and then just also smaller adjustments that they're making within their own classrooms.
very interesting. I will look forward to having you on again to tell me once you've like kind of gone through all this.
Oh, great.
So that you've concluded. I'll put you on the spot. I'll say, okay, start talking.
Great.
Yeah, you'll look forward to that. It's kind of like a term paper, only live on the air. No, I've noticed that with people, like I'll have these great conversations with people like at a meeting or something, and I'll say, oh, you should come on the show. And they're like, okay. They come on the show. As soon as you put a microphone in front of them, they're like, yes, no, what? No, get a little closer. Yeah, okay. I'm just back here. It's like nothing. It's just not there. This thing is a barrier. Why do I keep hitting things? God. Anyway.
One of those days. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about what I have to say.
So good. No, I gesticulate a lot, which is really bad for radio. I'm sitting here like going, yeah, it's like this, and people go, like, what? What are you doing about? I can't help it. I'm very demonstrative. Shakespearean. Anyway, melodramatic. So anyway, yes. So putting you on the spot. You were
Okay.
studying ice, right?
Yes.
So I had a question that I thought of when I read that, and then it's like not formulating in my head. It was a question about secure communities versus the PEP thing.
Yeah.
Like, it seemed to me, if I'm not remembering it exactly right, but it seemed to me that secure communities had like a stated use and an unstated use. The stated use being to remove criminals from the system. That sounds weird, but the unstated use was to recruit local law enforcement
Yes.
to do
To
our
identify.
job for us, so
Increase the
that
capacity of ICE. Yeah.
without paying more money.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Let them foot the bill. So when they came up with PEP, obviously the stated thing is still the same thing. We'll remove criminals, only this time they're going to be really dangerous ones. What do you think the unstated, is it still the same?
Well, I think I'm actually not sure how it works with PEP and the local law enforcement. But I think it's the same core problem in that it's looking at people's criminal records and finding people who are, even though they're stating that they're looking for a different level of criminals, that with secure communities they were getting people on traffic violations and things like that. But now they're justifying it, saying, well, we're going after people with DUI, we're going after more high-level offenses. But I think the root problem is that these people have already been convicted, they're going to probation, they're sort of paying their debt to society already, and some of the cases have been pretty old, I think. So I think just that is a level of unfairness to the people who, yes, they did commit a crime, but we can talk about the issues with our criminal justice system on another radio station probably. But just the fact that these people have gone through the process, and it's not like they're looking for a criminal on the loose. It's someone who's been going to the courthouse for their probation, and that's another thing that I learned when I was doing my research, is that instead of working now with local law enforcement, ICE agents have been working with probation officers to identify when and where undocumented people will be coming to their probation appointments, and they've picked people up at the courthouse. In the past year, they've been there 5 times. So yeah, it's something that I know I talked to Ricardo about this too, and different people have different opinions. Like, well, you know, maybe you shouldn't be exposing yourself, committing these crimes, especially if you're undocumented, because that increases your visibility to a high degree. But at the same time, it's something that these people are already going through the process of addressing the crimes that they've committed, and it's also sort of unclear, but it seems to be to identify people to go after, because ICE comes here for individuals is another thing that I learned. They don't really do raids around this area, so they identify individuals. It's been said by some people that I interviewed that there's a possibility of ICE looking at recent criminal records, which are public, and just identifying possible targets by their names. So using that sort of profiling. So I think it becomes a complicated issue. And yeah, it's there's like layers and layers of complicated things, and I think it's definitely collides with my belief of that people who want to be in this country should be able to get a path to citizenship and be here. And you know, there's a whole other issue of committing crimes, and obviously DUIs are bad. But you know, it becomes a sort of tangled thing. And the reason I started this research was because I've been hearing in North Carolina and also in Illinois, ICE has places where they're not allowed to go to pick people up, so churches and schools. I've been hearing in North Carolina they picked up a kid at a bus stop, which is technically not a place where they're allowed to go to pick people up. And then they also lured a man out of his church through text and saying that they had been his brother in a car crash. So that's sort of what led me to want to look at this issue of ICE in the community, because I was wondering, you know, who are they going after? Are they breaking the rules like they've been doing in other places? And it seems like they're sticking to their rules here in the community, which you can talk about those rules as I've said before, it's a complicated issue, but that's what I've been talking to, and then everyone who I talk to has been sort of sticking by this idea that they're coming here with names of people who have criminal records that they want to go through the deportation process. But I've also heard from Ricardo actually that there's been cases, he called it domino effect, where ICE comes to someone's house, they have a name, that person isn't home, there's someone else home who happens also to be undocumented, and they just take that person. Yeah. So the ICE is very volatile and a frightening organization. So it's definitely a frightening thing, and looking at ICE data, I have sort of been able to identify patterns in where they've been. There's you can call in and do a FOIA request to METCAD, which is the local 911 dispatch, and they have ICE has an agreement with local police that whenever they're in the area, they call METCAD to let them know that they're in the area, and that is to prevent missing persons reports. And if someone's family member gets detained, they can call METCAD and see if ICE was in the area. Right. but yeah, that's the data that I looked at, and that Brian Dolinar has also been working hard to collect that data to see where ICE has been, and it's they come frequently enough where it is definitely it's concerning, and you can see the places that they go the most. So, yeah.
Well, it was interesting you mentioned the criminal justice system and how that's like a whole other thing, and it really is kind of. But one thing that I was thinking of while you were talking is that a lot of the problems that come from stuff like this is when criminal justice is operated almost like a business or something. And so it's like, okay, we have a quota. We need to get out 50 people a month.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So your job is to find those 50 people, and then we'll remove them. How do you do that? You know, so it's not really. So even when they say, well, we're just taking the worst criminals, they don't know who these people are. All they'd have is like a court record or something, or you've been convicted, or you've been whatever, and that's all they know about you. They don't know the particulars of your situation.
Yeah.
DUI, like how much DUI? Were you like slamming beers all night and you're like so drunk you're blind and you're like going across the road and you're endangering everybody? Or did you just have like 1% over the limit or whatever, you know? What is it? There's a big difference between, in any sort of criminal situation, which is supposedly, this is what trials are about, this is what judges are for, is you present the evidence and like, okay, she was just kind of at a party and things kind of got out of hand and you just sort of got picked up with everybody, so we'll give you 2 months of probation just to kind of teach you that you got to watch who you hang out with. ICE doesn't care about that. As soon as they see your name on the list, it's like, okay, you're ready to go.
Yeah.
So it seems to ignore, it's like sets up this process. We have this whole system of justice based around trying to create some sort of fairness within our laws, and then you have this other agency that operates completely, disregards all of that stuff, and just says, oh, are you on the list? Okay.
Yep.
You know, you've been naughty. You get no presents this year. You know, whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
I think that was part of the problem with secure communities, and that remains the problem. They haven't solved that aspect of it.
They're not looking at the context of these issues.
So with secure communities, the problem was they were empowering all sorts of people to be sort of pseudo immigration agents. And those people had their own agendas, their own whatever. They didn't know what they were doing. You know, so all these people suddenly have this power, so they go, oh, tail light out. Okay, I'm going to call you in, and then we're going to call, you know, and just they were taking it upon themselves to do that. That was not in the script. They just did it because they thought, hey, I'm helping out, you know. So that was a big problem with that, and that's one reason why all across the country everybody was going, oh, secure communities, this is not working very well, because they saw that happening. So yeah, they went through there and said, okay, let's fix this. Well, they sort of fixed it, but they missed one big point, which is you're still not taking the human factor into account. Is this person that you're tossing out, do they have a family? Do they have kids? Have they been here for a long time? Are they a part of their community? Are they, you know, whatever? Was this a first offense, a 10th offense? Is this, you know, all that stuff that you would want someone to take into account? Yeah, it didn't matter. Doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with it. That's my problem with it. It's not that they're identifying criminals. I mean, fine. If people are criminals and they're not supposed to be here, okay, that makes sense. You know, why are we messing with this person? They're not supposed to be here anyway, and they're doing terrible things while they're here. So, okay, I get that theoretically. I get that as an idea or an ideal, but it doesn't work the way they're doing it, and they don't seem to ever understand that point. Maybe.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And something you said earlier also also resonated with me, sort of the idea of our criminal justice system as a business, and we've been seeing that happen with local, obviously not Champaign-Urbana because they pulled out of working with ICE, but other towns in Illinois have been making money through contracting jail beds, for ICE holds.
Right.
So I think Brian coined the term jail industrial system or something like that, where it's just these small towns that are now getting revenue from ICE for
Yeah.
cooperating with them and holding people with them. So it becomes another thing where, like, well, why did you pick this particular person up? Like you said, is it to meet the quota? So
Mm-hmm.
so you can make all this money for your town through this jail. So it's definitely, yeah, it's complicated. Yeah.
It is really complicated,
Mhm.
and it's hard to, because it's not a person.
Mhm.
That's one thing that the movies and media did us a real disservice as we're growing up, is teaching us that there's always a bad guy at the
Yeah.
back of everything, like
True.
the evil genius who's like, okay, here's what we're going to do.
Mhm.
Ha twirl my mustache. And then, they make the plan, and if only you can find that person and expose them, then everything bad goes away. But it's not like that. It's a lot of different people working sometimes together, sometimes completely unknown to each other, who are all in some way benefiting or feel a benefit from the system.
Yeah.
That's what makes things happen. And that's what creates problems. And it's really hard to undo that, because you can say, here's the problem, and you'll have 20 other people going, you're wrong. It's not that at all. Their job is to make it seem like you don't know what you're talking about, because they're defending their perpetuation of the problem. So it's just like this ongoing struggle in life to try to figure out how to make things better, when you have people who are also working just as hard to figure out how to make them worse,
Yeah.
for profit or
Mhm.
for some perceived benefit for themselves. So now I've become an anarchist and a cynic, all in one show. Well, we're approaching the end of the show. We've got about 4 minutes, 5 minutes, something like that. Let's see. We got 4 minutes. So is there anything that you were hoping to say that you didn't get a chance to say? Here's your chance to leap out there and say, well, I wanted to get this one point across. Either of you? Maybe? Sort of?
I can't think. I think we had a
You've got paper on
right.
your lap.
This,
Were
I
you
just
gonna,
had. I
read
just brought my
something?
report because I didn't know
Oh.
what the format of the
Oh, you thought I was going to
the
grill you on
questionnaire
it.
would
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
No, I think that we've had a great conversation. Yeah.
Are you comfortable?
Yeah, I feel
You
good.
said what you wanted to say?
I think
'Cause-
so.
Yeah, I don't know. I talk too much, and we start here and then we end up over there, and it was like, well, I wanted to say this. So I always try to give somebody at least a little opportunity at the end to at least get their point across, in case I had derailed them, because I have done that before. I will admit, not on purpose.
Of course.
Never would do that on purpose. But anyway, I really appreciate you guys coming on the show, and
Thank you.
I hope one or other or both of you will come back at some point, because I would like to hear what you end up with and what you end up with. I'd like to know, it's like you read in the paper, oh my God, this thing happened, and then you never find out,
Right, right.
did they save the baby or what? What happened? I don't know. They just found him in a tree, but I don't know what. So I like to find out what, at least track me down at some point at a immigration forum meeting or something, and say, here's what I came up with at the end of my project, because I'm really curious about this stuff. I think it's very interesting. Obviously I'm involved with the ICE stuff because that's what I do with the forum, but I'm also really interested in how people get along with each other and how they figure out how to use space together and,
Right.
and all that stuff. I think that's fascinating, because, like I was saying, going from being a really, really shy person and then kind of forcing myself to open up a bit over the years, I've noticed like a different use of space and different sense of comfort in space.